What if the greatest risk you ever took was for someone you didn't even know? Would you do it? And could you live with the consequences? That question still echoes in my mind, long after the sirens faded and the streets went back to their usual noise. The day everything changed for me began like any other in the city. The air was crisp with early spring, sunlight catching on car windshields and casting hard shadows up and down the avenue. New York never slows down for anyone, especially not for someone like me. My name is Elijah Boone, but until that morning, the world hardly noticed it. I was just another face in a Navy work uniform, hands rough from janitorial shifts, dreams as wrinkled as the sleeves I couldn't afford to press. I'd finished my rounds at Midtown 1, sweeping the lobby while security guards glanced at their phones, when my routine collided with fate at exactly 8:46 a.m. It started with a scream, a woman's voice, urgent but cut short. On the sidewalk just beyond the revolving doors, I spotted a figure moving fast. Too fast and then another. A woman, mid-20s, stumbling backward with fear carved on her face. In the split second before my body moved, I saw something glint in the man's hand. A gun. Everything slowed. "Ma'am, get down!" I shouted, voice louder than I'd ever heard it. I leapt forward on pure instinct. No plan, just a gut-deep need to protect. The woman gasped, and then a thunderclap. Pain ripped through my left shoulder, hot and deep. I hit the ground hard, the city spinning around me in fractured sound and light. Blood bloomed across my uniform, turning navy to black. Strangely, I didn't scream or curse. I just lay there staring up at the sky, the kind of blue that mocks you with its indifference. Around me, chaos exploded. Someone tackled the gunman. Others screamed for help. The woman dropped to her knees beside me, silk scarf already pressed to my wound, her hands trembling. "You're going to be okay," she whispered, though I could feel her panic through her shaking hands. I wanted to tell her I'd been through worse, that I'd learned how to ignore pain in the army. But all I managed was a weak, "Are you okay?" I remember the sirens, the blur of EMTs, a flash of her eyes, hazel, sharp, terrified, but grateful. She wouldn't let go of my hand, not even when they tried to keep her out of the ambulance. That touch, warm and desperate, kept me from slipping away. 30 minutes earlier, I'd been just another worker. Now I was someone's shield. I never expected that my life would hinge on a single decision, one that would unravel everything I thought I knew about strangers, sacrifice, and the surprising places love can take root. They rushed us to St. Vincent's, a trauma center where the air always smelled of antiseptic and something bitterer. Hope flickering between life and loss. The last thing I saw before the operating room lights swallowed me was the woman's face, streaked with tears and disbelief. Her name, I learned later, was Maya Renault, daughter of the legendary developer, Arthur Renault, the kind of man who made fortunes by building higher, faster, riskier. That morning, she was supposed to meet her father to deliver news that would shake his empire to its core. But fate, or maybe something like grace, had thrown a stranger in her path, and now both our lives had spun off their axes. Hours slipped by in a haze of painkillers and half-remembered dreams. When I finally woke, the light outside my window had shifted, late afternoon, slanting gold through slatted blinds. My shoulder throbbed. The room hummed with machinery, and there, still as a shadow in the visitor's chair, sat Maya. She looked tired, coat wrinkled and eyes red, but she offered a tentative smile. "Welcome back," she said quietly. I tried to sit up, gritting my teeth against the pain. "Didn't think I'd see you again," I mumbled. She shook her head, a strange mix of relief and guilt in her expression. "I couldn't leave. Not after what you did. You," her voice caught, "you saved my life." I didn't know what to say. The words seemed too small. "Anyone would have done it," I lied. She gave a bitter laugh. "Not in this city, not when bullets fly." There was a beat of silence. Then she said, "Do you have family I should call?" I hesitated, searching for the truth that wouldn't embarrass me. "Just my grandmother. She's in Baltimore. Doesn't remember much these days." Maya nodded, understanding flickering in her gaze. "I'm sorry." The nurse came and went, checking my vitals. Maya never moved. Her phone buzzed constantly. Press, security, her father. She ignored them all. When she finally stood to leave, she paused at the door. Thank you, Elijah. Truly. I owe you more than I can say. Her words lingered after she left, like the echo of a bell in a quiet church. From there, everything changed. News crews camped outside the hospital, hungry for a headline. Unknown janitor saves billionaire's daughter, splashed across local news tickers. My phone, usually silent, lit up with messages from old army buddies, even from strangers who saw me on TV. They called me a hero, but I didn't feel like one. I felt lucky and bruised and a little lost. The next morning, Maya returned. She brought coffee and a fresh change of clothes. Not her idea, she admitted, but her assistance. The look in her eyes was different. Less shock, more gratitude. She sat at my bedside, folding her hands carefully in her lap. I've been thinking a lot, she began, about what happened, about why someone would try to kill me. I stayed quiet, letting her fill the silence. She told me about the secrets she'd uncovered at her father's company, a web of corruption and betrayal she'd only just begun to unravel. I guess doing the right thing makes you dangerous to the wrong people, she said with a tired smile. That's been my experience, I replied, surprising myself. She looked at me, studying my face as if searching for something she'd missed. Who are you, really, Elijah Boone? I hesitated, old habits rising up. For years, I'd learned to blend in, to keep my past tucked away. But something about her gaze, earnest, vulnerable, made me want to tell the truth. I was a medic in the Army, I said finally. Lost more than I won. Got discharged for not following orders. Tried to save some kids when command said to fall back. Paid the price. She reached out, touching my hand gently. Thank you for telling me, and for everything else. In that moment, something shifted between us. Something tender, unexpected. Two people, both carrying wounds invisible and real, suddenly found themselves on the same side of a line drawn by fate. Before she left that day, Maya pressed a small envelope into my palm. When you're ready, she said, read it. After she was gone, I turned the envelope over in my hands, feeling the weight of words unsaid. In the distance, I could hear the city, a constant, restless hum. For the first time, I wondered if maybe, just maybe, my story wasn't over. That saving a stranger could be the beginning of something bigger. Maybe even something like love. Personal reflection, Kakayur, episode close. I still remember that first night in the hospital, staring at the city lights while the pain ebbed and flowed. I thought about all the decisions that had brought me to that bed, the mistakes, the regrets, the moments of courage. It's easy to see yourself as a background character until life hands you a script you can't ignore. If you're watching this, ask yourself, what would you do if the chance to do something truly right came out of nowhere? Would you step in, even if it cost you? I used to think heroes wore uniforms, had medals. Now I think they just look like anyone who decides for one impossible moment to care more about someone else than themselves. If this story moved you, or if you've ever been changed by a stranger's kindness, let us know in the comments. And subscribe to hear what happens next, because sometimes the real story is just getting started. The first thing I noticed when I woke up again wasn't the pain. It was Maya's voice, soft and steady, reading quietly from a folded piece of paper. She sat by my bedside, eyes flicking between the note and my face, as if she was willing me back to the surface. I listened, not quite awake but not drifting, to the melody of her words. You once told me the world is built by those who show up, who don't turn away when it matters most. I'm grateful you showed up for me, even if I still don't know why. She caught me watching her, and the tension in her shoulders eased just a little. The sunlight on the hospital wall behind her looked like the beginning of something new. Sorry, I croaked, and immediately regretted it. My voice sounded like gravel. Maya smiled, genuine, not the tight, polite kind she'd worn for the cameras. Don't apologize for waking up. I was starting to worry you were just stubborn enough to sleep through all of this. I managed a half smile. I'm pretty stubborn. Ask anyone. The hospital felt quieter than it had yesterday. Maybe the world had started to move on. Or maybe everything just sounded different after you've survived something you never saw coming. Maya leaned forward. You missed a lot. Half the city thinks you're a hero. The rest are arguing about who gets to interview you first. There's even a GoFundMe for your medical bills. I had nothing to do with that, I promise. I shook my head, wincing at the sharp pull in my shoulder. I don't need charity. It's not charity, Elijah. People want to thank you. Sometimes letting people care is the hardest thing, isn't it? I didn't answer. I'd spent a lot of years telling myself I didn't need anyone. Now I wasn't so sure. Outside, I heard footsteps. A nurse peeked in, smiling. Looks like your VIP guest is still here, she teased Maya. We've got to take some vitals, but you can stay. Maya squeezed my hand and stood. I'll be right back. Try not to cause any trouble while I'm gone. Alone, I looked around the room. Sterile, white, impersonal. On the table by my bed sat the envelope Maya had given me before. My good hand fumbled it open. Inside, I found a note written in her looping, careful script. If the world ever feels too heavy, remember, you carried it for someone else. Even for a moment, that's enough. Maya. I let the words settle into my bones. I never wanted attention, but for the first time since I could remember, I felt seen. The next day brought more visitors. My Aunt Renee arrived with a flurry of scolding and relief. She hugged me carefully, fussed over my IV lines, and scolded Maya, then turned soft and warm and made us both laugh with her stories. You saved her life, Eli, she said, squeezing my hand. Your mama would have been proud. But don't you dare scare me like that again. I only have one nephew and I plan to keep you around. Maya beamed. He's not going anywhere. Not if I have a say in it. That earned her a side eye from Aunt Renee. But it was playful. For a moment, the hospital room felt like a kitchen, a backyard, a home. I realized then that home wasn't a place. It was the people willing to fight for you, or, in Maya's case, with you. By afternoon, the hospital PR team tried to herd Maya into a press conference. She refused. She stayed with me, arguing with security, her father's lawyers, anyone who tried to pull her away. I watched her, amused and a little awed. You're stubborn too, I said. She shrugged, her eyes never leaving mine. Maybe that's what it takes to survive this city. We talked for hours, about everything and nothing. She told me about growing up in Arthur Renault's shadow, learning how to read blueprints before she could ride a bike. I told her about the army, about my grandmother, about all the jobs I'd lost trying to do the right thing. She listened like no one ever had, with the kind of attention that makes you believe you matter. Late in the evening, after Aunt Renee left and the hospital quieted, Maya grew serious. I need to ask you something, she said, and I need the truth. Go ahead. She hesitated, then handed me a folded paper. It was a threat, typed, unsigned, slid under her office door that morning. Some secrets are worth killing for. My heart clenched. You think this was about you? She nodded. I was getting close to something. Something big, something dirty. I think my father's deputy, Philip, is behind it. But after what happened, after you got shot, I can't let anyone else get hurt. I took a shaky breath. Maya, you can't just stop. You're right to fight. But you don't have to do it alone anymore. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Then she squeezed my hand, her grip fierce. You don't have to protect me from this, Elijah. But maybe we can protect each other. The silence in that room was a kind of promise. The next day, my story hit the front page. The photo of Maya and me, her holding my hand, me bleeding on the pavement, became a symbol of something bigger than either of us. Courage, kindness, the possibility of something good surviving in a hard city. But fame brought its shadows. The press hounded Maya. Conspiracy theorists swarmed online. My past, dishonorable discharge, bounced rent checks, jobs lost for speaking up, surfaced. Maya didn't flinch. If anything, she held me closer, as if daring the world to try her. Her father, Arthur Renault, arrived at the hospital in a storm of tailored suits and bodyguards. He pulled Maya into the hallway for a tense conversation that ended with her chin high and his face thunderous. When she returned, she looked lighter somehow. He doesn't understand, she said, but I do. Later that afternoon, I watched her from my bed, sunlight pooling around her. She had power, money, a future so bright it hurt to look at. I had scars, stories, a history most people would rather forget. Yet there we were, two unlikely allies, tethered by one impossible act. That night, Maya brought me a suit. There's a gala tomorrow. My father's company is throwing it. Investors, press, the whole circus. I want you to come. I gawked at her. I can't go to a party, Maya. I barely fit in my own life. She laughed, the sound like music. You don't have to fit in. Just show up. For me. The next evening, I stood in front of a mirror, awkward in borrowed clothes, bandages visible beneath the crisp white shirt. Maya entered, radiant in navy, and smiled at my discomfort. You look perfect, she said, offering her arm. Ready to crash the gates? I took her arm, and together we stepped into the bright, dangerous world of power and privilege, where every handshake was a deal and every glance a test. Inside the ballroom, the whispers started immediately. That's him. That's the one who saved her. Maya kept her head high, introducing me to investors, executives, even journalists. Her father watched from across the room, eyes hard but resigned. A toast was raised. Arthur gave a speech about courage and gratitude. When he called me a hero, I barely heard the applause. I was too busy watching Maya, who held my gaze, her pride silent but unmistakable. Afterward, as the crowd drifted away, she took my hand. Tonight wasn't about them, she whispered. It was about us, about standing up. I nodded, understanding at last. Maybe the greatest love stories begin with courage, not just in the face of danger, but in the quiet hours after, when someone chooses you again and again. The city's skyline was bruised purple with morning when I awoke, heartbeat thudding out the memory of applause and stares. For the first time since the bullet, the world felt bigger than the wound. Maya's voice was in my head, not reading a letter now, but laughing softly as we'd snuck out of the gala through the kitchen, her hand tight in mine. Her laugh had steadied me more than the morphine ever did. I'd barely slept. That photo of me, dusty and desperate, dragging a girl from a burning building, with that note, "Some debts don't go unpaid," had rattled something loose inside. After Maya drifted off on the couch, exhausted by media calls and fallout, I sat by the window and let myself remember the army, the dishonor, the times I could have spoken up and didn't, the day I did and lost everything. But that night, in a borrowed suit and with the city's most powerful family at my side, it felt like the world was daring me to show up again. And for once, I did. News of the gala speech traveled faster than the morning light. By noon, clips had gone viral. Me in front of a crowd of the powerful, not taking a medal, but handing the mic back and calling for truth. Maya's name trended again, but this time, it wasn't about her father's empire or another luxury project breaking ground. It was about standing up, about refusing silence. The press wanted interviews, exposés, but Maya shielded me. Instead, she took the wheel, called an emergency meeting with her company's board, subpoenaed internal communications, and with her father cornered by headlines, launched an investigation that reached from Manhattan to Geneva. I watched her move with the grace of someone used to power, but this time her strength felt different. She didn't wield it like a weapon. She held it open, inviting others in. 3 days after the gala, Maya found me sitting in her father's old office, leafing through files I didn't really want to understand. She paused in the doorway, a stack of papers in her hand and worry in her eyes. "Elijah," she said quietly, "we have to talk." I braced myself for more bad news, but instead she slid into the chair across from me and handed over the stack. They found out about the shell companies, offshore accounts. Philip's fingerprints are everywhere, but so are my father's. I felt the room tilt a little. "Are you okay?" She nodded, but her eyes were glassy. "I always wanted to believe he was ruthless, but not cruel. But he paid for silence, Elijah. He let people get hurt." "Let me get hurt, almost." I reached for her hand. "You aren't him." She squeezed back fiercely. "I need you to understand. This is going to get ugly. My father's name is on half the buildings in New York, but by the time this is over, it may be on something worse." I took a long breath. "Whatever comes, I'm here. I'm not running." That was all she needed. She nodded once, wiped her eyes, and began making calls. The next week was a hurricane. Maya gave her testimony in front of the SEC, then the DOJ, her voice calm but never cold. Her father's lawyers tried to block every move, but the evidence piled up. When Philip was arrested at JFK trying to board a flight to Madrid, the city exhaled. A sigh of relief, or maybe the end of a long delusion. I stayed in the background mostly, offering what support I could, holding Maya when the nights got long, making coffee and sometimes just listening. But my name came up too, again and again. The photo of me pulling a child from rubble, the helmet cam footage someone had finally sent to Maya, became national news. My dishonorable discharge was reversed in less than a week. The city wanted to hold me up as a symbol, but I knew better. There were thousands of others, quieter, braver, who'd never get headlines. I thought of my mother, my Aunt Renee, and all the silent sacrifices that built lives in the shadows. The final reckoning came in a federal courtroom. I wore a suit that fit. This time, one Maya had chosen. She stood beside me, face set, and when Harold Renault walked in, I felt the air crackle with judgment. He was older now, the years of empire and avoidance etched into every line of his face. He didn't look at Maya, not once. When she took the stand, her voice was clear as glass. "I love my father," she said, "but I will not be defined by his silence. Nor should this city." When it was my turn, the room fell so quiet I could hear my own heart. "I was taught to heal, not to hide," I told the court. "If telling the truth cost me everything again, so be it. At least I'll know I stood for something." The jury took less than 2 hours to convict. When the verdict was read, Maya's hand found mine under the table. Neither of us cried. We just breathed. Afterward, we walked out into the cold New York wind, the courthouse behind us, the future uncharted. "That's it?" I asked, voice rough. "That's it," Maya replied, but there was a spark in her eyes. "Feels like something should change," I said, almost embarrassed. She looked at me, half smiling. "It already has." We moved slow after that. Maya stepped down from her family company, sold the penthouse, and donated the proceeds to the new Boone Williams Foundation. Her idea, not mine. She said the world didn't need another luxury tower. It needed safe houses, legal funds, and scholarships for kids who'd never be called heroes unless someone noticed. Aunt Renee came up from Baltimore and started teaching financial literacy workshops. I started running a support group for veterans who'd gotten lost in the system. And every evening, Maya and I would walk the river, talking about nothing, about everything, about healing. Some nights she'd ask, "Do you miss it? The adrenaline, the noise?" I'd shake my head. "I miss feeling necessary, but I don't miss being invisible." She'd squeeze my hand. "You'll never be invisible again, Elijah." One rainy Saturday, we sat in a tiny Harlem cafe, just the two of us, and a notebook between our coffee mugs. Maya wrote a single word on the first page: "Begin." "Start your story," she said. I did. I wrote about the bullet, the hospital, the way love snuck in through the cracks of disaster. I wrote about shame, about forgiveness, about learning to accept help, and finally about choosing hope. She read every word quietly, then handed the notebook back. "You know," she said, "all the buildings my family built, none of them lasted as long as a story." That afternoon, we walked to the memorial pool at Ground Zero. Maya pressed a note between the granite names. Her mother's, her uncle's, her family lost to old wounds and new. I left a single dog tag, my last memento from a life spent running. "Let's stop running," I said. She nodded, tears on her cheeks but a smile on her lips. "Let's go home." Home was never a place for either of us. It was the way Maya looked at me across a crowded room, the way she fought for strangers, the way I finally learned to forgive myself for what I'd lost. A year later, the Boone Williams Initiative had saved a dozen whistleblowers, paid for 3 new trauma clinics, and awarded scholarships to kids whose only crime was honesty. We married in the spring, quietly, with Aunt Renee officiating and a handful of friends, old soldiers, new neighbors, even a few city council members who'd come to know us by our first names. Our vows weren't fancy. "For the moments no one sees," Maya whispered. "For the truths that don't make the news." I answered, "For every risk worth taking, for every new day." We walked out into the sunlight, a pair of survivors of violence, of power, of our own doubts, determined to make each day count for someone else. Now, as I write this, the city is alive again. The skyline glitters, unashamed, and Maya is beside me, laughing at something I said, her eyes bright with a future neither of us thought we'd earn. If you've watched this story, if you've stayed through the pain, the mess, and the redemption, then maybe you know the truth too. Sometimes loving a stranger is the bravest act of all. Sometimes the person who saves you isn't the one with the gun or the badge or the spotlight, but the one who refuses to let you disappear. And that's where we end. Not with perfection, not with a promise of happily ever after, but with a new beginning. Let me ask you, have you ever risked everything for someone you barely knew? Did it change you? Tell your story in the comments. If you believe in quiet courage and second chances, subscribe to this channel. And remember, love is never wasted. Kindness never fails. And no one is truly invisible, not if we see each other. Thank you for spending your time with us. Until next time, stay kind, stay brave, and keep believing in new beginnings.